From Rule 62 Studios in Bossier City, Louisiana, this is The Grouch and the Brainstorm. Matt, this is episode 24.
Hallelujah.
Isn't that insane?
That's crazy.
We are almost a quarter of a way to 100. Now,
That's crazy.
that's assuming we're going to make 100 episodes.
Yeah.
Oh, we will.
Yeah. That's assuming, right? But
Right.
Episode 24, and I think we ought to do something special for episode 25.
Okay.
We'll have a special topic with a special guest. How about that?
I like it.
I'll put it together.
Okay.
I'll figure out what I can do to get somebody famous up in here.
Coleman?
Well, we've already had Coleman, but he's about as close to
though.
famous as I know.
Most famous guy. I know.
Self-inflicted fame.
Yes, right. That's right.
So, with that being said, we the last steps we worked on were steps 7 and 8. Now, I keep saying that. No, the last steps we worked on were steps 6 and 7. The last ones we had a discussion on. How about that? We're not working steps. We're just having a discussion with our experience. And the last ones we talked about were steps 7 and 8. And so I'm thinking that we still have a few issues we need to backtrack on, and those issues, not issues, but things we need to talk about, and those things are we didn't talk about in the beginning, like faith. We never talked about faith. We never talked about hope.
And that's important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the hope thing is very important. I used to say when I got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that I had no hope when I got here. I had none whatsoever, and I believed that. I did. And then tragically, a couple of years into my recovery, I lost a sponsee. And I happened to be with him when he passed away. And he passed away from alcohol poisoning, basically, is what it is, where, all your organs just shut down due to drinking so much. But after that, I kind of realized what no hope really looks like, when there's nothing left to even save, just a body laying there, right? So I used to see it as that, and that made me realize that I had hope all along, or I probably wouldn't have just showed up. I probably wouldn't have came to AA if I was completely devoid of hope. And that may have been a small bit, because I'm a naysayer, man. I am
Oh, yeah. Big skeptic right here.
Oh, my God. You walk into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we probably covered this on a previous episode, but you walk into the rooms, you look up on the walls, and you see all these sayings and these steps, and this wasn't, my sobriety date is in 2011, midway through 2011, and I had actually been in the rooms and in treatment centers a lot between the year 2000 and the year 2011. So none of this was really new, as in I'd never seen it or anything, but I still didn't understand it. I didn't know what I was looking at. And I didn't think that sitting down with another man and talking or even working the steps, I didn't think any of that. It just didn't make sense. Right? So when it comes to that, I didn't really have a whole lot of hope that the program was going to save me. What gave me hope was when I would hear people share their experience, strength, and hope. But when I would hear people share, and they used to have lives that were very similar to mine, if not worse. And here they are with 3 months sober, 6 months sober, a year sober. And I've ran across a lot of old timers in the different groups that I've been in the meetings, and a lot of them are just really against telling war stories. Stick to the solution, don't stick to the problem. You hear that a lot. I'm not. I don't subscribe to that. I needed to hear some war stories. I needed to hear people talking about what they had done in order for me to relate to it, to have a little bit of hope.
I agree. Even though in the beginning I thought it was complete, bullshit, but
No, I have to go with you right there. Man.
Well, and you know, it sort of establishes your street cred, if you will, you know, with people in there, and you hear a guy's been sober. We interviewed Phil very early on in this thing,
Yeah.
and he's talking about in the 70s not being able to hold a cheeseburger down from McDonald's and throwing up in a trash can. And I went,
And by the way,
Yeah.
in the 70s, a cheeseburger at McDonald's was really greasy.
Yeah,
They had
yeah.
no standards whatsoever.
Yeah, and probably like
Yeah.
11 cents.
yeah. And but I hear him telling us that. He told me and Mike that we're sitting at the club, you know, talking to him, and my brain immediately goes, in 2018, the nurse at the treatment center is trying to give me medicine, and I haven't eaten in 2 weeks, and I'm throwing up at the smell of a cupcake that she tried to get me to eat. It doesn't change. It doesn't matter if it's 1970, 2018, we're all the same. But you look at Phil now and you go, yeah, I wouldn't picture that happening, but it did happen, you know, and
Yeah.
I want to hear stuff like that. So,
Yeah, I need to hear. I need to hear some of the antics. You know, give me something other than I drank and couldn't stop. Right.
Right.
I need to hear something like, this is what I did as a result. So, and we hear that in meetings, you know, don't want to hear war stories and all these other things. And that's, you know, I guess the individual's choice. But we read in the big book in working with others that, you know, you're supposed to be able to tell the newcomer, that man you're working with, some of the things about you. You know, talk about your issues you had with alcohol in order to relate to them. To me, that's just another example of giving people hope, right? And I needed to hear those. And do either one of y'all remember when you realized that there was hope? You know, and I know, Jill, you're a little late bloomer. You know, just
I really am.
first couple of years were a little sketchy. But there had to be a point where you realized that there was hope, because if not, you wouldn't be here.
I know, and I can't remember when that was. I think I do. I mean, it was, of course, going through the steps for the first time, which took me a really long time to do because I procrastinated and all. But I think, actually, I do recall, and it wasn't, I hadn't gone through the steps yet. I was in treatment, and call it one of my first miracles is, I was diagnosed with panic disorder in in the mid 90s or so. And
This is fresh out of high school then.
yeah. Right out of high school, I was diagnosed with panic disorder, brought on by, it was definitely drug induced. And and I was, like you guys probably know, I was, sedated for a really long time on those. And I remember being taken off those. I mean, I was coming to treatment for the opioids, not all the other things, because of course I needed it. But anyway, I want to say that I felt like I was going to lose my mind for quite a while, but around day 60, 65, around there, I started to realize I wasn't having that crippling anxiety anymore. And of course, that's probably a physiological thing, but it is my miracle.
Yeah.
Because maybe there's still people in recovery that struggle with panic attacks and stuff. And I remember specifically talking to God, which I wasn't sure was a thing. My counselor was like, pray about it. I was like, but I feel like I'm like talking in the air. I feel like a complete psychotic person. And they started to like dissipate. And to me, that was the first time like I had hope, because I'd been in a hopeless state for so long, thinking I'll never get over this. Something will be fundamentally wrong with me for the rest of my life. I can't do anything because of this. And that went away. And I think the more I went through the steps, the more hope I had, because I've never been one to be like, take someone's word for it. Because I told you I am a skeptic, but I was like, prove it. And so I had to prove it to me, because I still wasn't really believing anybody, because I was still in that state of mind that I was unique and no one really understood. And once I saw all this stuff happening in my life, that's where I started to have hope. And it's just totally wild to me. I didn't have hope, and for a really long time, and to see like for at first like that go away, I started like one day I just felt happy for no reason.
That's weird.
It was weird, and even my counselor had to like pull me in and say,
Are you happy?
Okay.
"Well, no,
What the hell's wrong with you, Jill?
I wasn't used to happiness, and she kept telling me like stop sabotaging happiness
Yeah.
because it was so awkward and weird. I didn't know what to do with it. But like in the steps, it says we will be amazed before we were halfway through. And I think there's a lot to be said about
Right.
that phrase and hope and starting to see the promises come true.
Yeah.
And because like, how did they know?
Well,
I always say that. How did these guys know that this would work for anybody that really gave it a shot?
yeah. Because it worked for them.
Yep, that's exactly.
The first 100 or 98, whatever
Yeah,
it was.
I just still think that's wild.
But I mean, I think that's also God had his hand in it. I don't know that they knew all the way, but they did what they felt, their higher power was.
They believed enough for it to be real.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
absolutely.
I mean, they had that belief, and from the get go, and after I guess a little experimental period, I'm glad you brought up the 9-step promises. Mm-hmm. Okay, and after this episode, the next episode, we're going to dive off into step 8 and 9, right?
Yeah.
Well, I say that, but we're going to have our anniversary 25th episode, and then we're going to dive off in 8 and 9.
Yeah.
And then after that, we're going to talk about the promises, and that'll be a whole episode in itself, the 9-step promises. But the promises that we get into the rooms of AA and we read these promises hanging on the walls, which is in most clubs.
Yeah.
Or some clubs actually read them like as part of the beginning meeting.
Yeah.
Part of the agenda. Have you ever been to one of those where they read the night? This stuff sounds so crazy. Okay, just find you a friend that doesn't have a drinking problem, that ain't got nothing going on in life, just a regular old happy-go-lucky Joe Blow or Jane Blow, whatever. Get them in the rooms of AA and read them these promises and say, if you work these steps, this shit can happen for you. And they're going to look at you like, what the hell are you talking about?
I really did think that was the biggest.
Crock of shit. Yeah.
Yes, I did.
No, I'm gonna have
and
to
then
go
it
with
says, are these extravagant promises? I'm like, absolutely.
Well, if you think about the promises themselves, every damn one of them came true when you drank. The feelings of uselessness, self-pity disappeared. I knew a new freedom and a new happiness.
Right.
Financial insecurity went away because I was blowing and going, boy. I mean, if you think about that, how...
Wow.
Yeah, but then you got to sober up.
Right,
And
right.
unfortunately, all those promises go away.
So they
when
were
you sober.
temporary promises. when we were
They're
drinking.
basically IOUs written by a bottle of liquor. But that is, I guess, if we read those and as a newcomer, we come into the rooms of AA and we see these things and we're like, wow, that can happen for me. Now I've got hope. No. No. I think the way you just described it was spot on, because none of that stuff, that was so far. I want to stop shaking.
Right.
I mean,
I want to speak a sentence.
yeah, I want to be able to think about my children without crying. I want all the self-pity will disappear, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it to disappear. I didn't even realize what self-pity was
Right.
when I got to the rooms of AA. I was I was a really big victim of myself. I realized that all of the victimization that I had done was all caused by me. I did not have any hope that I didn't have a lot of hope there was anything that could make up for that, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
So I had to see these things happen in my life.
Agreed. And it's kind of like willingness to me. as far as hope went. Like just a little mustard seed. Like
Yeah.
that's what I had to start off with.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even, I feel like that wasn't even, it first starting off, that wasn't even it, period. There was zero
Yeah.
hope.
This was where hope. I was in a treatment center for 90 days, so I didn't use and all that there. But I was like, they kind of got me
Pinned down.
pinned down in here, the real test. And I remember I asked my sponsor the second day I was out of treatment, and he gave me the things to do. And I remember just going, I'm going to do this. It ain't going to work, but I'm going to do it.
Yep.
It ain't going to work, but I can always go back and say, I did everything y'all told me to do.
Guilty right here, buddy.
To the letter, and look at me now.
Right.
But then it did.
Yeah.
One day it did. And then the second day it did. And I was like, okay, this isn't funny now. This is actually working. And, so there was hope. I'll be honest, I didn't enjoy early sobriety at all. It was just such a shock and don't know what the word really, but
Yeah, it is shock. And you have to learn a totally different language.
yeah.
What does one day at a time mean?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah.
What is all this stuff they're throwing at us?
And like, I say this all the time too, and I mean it. I came in, I didn't know all that stuff. I hear all these people talking this lingo, and I was like, I don't know what all that is, but and you're not gonna know when you come in there. And we started. Mike had this idea because this is for people really that are trying to get help, and maybe this is a resource for them to do that. But don't just go in there and say, I've got it all figured out, or back out of it when you hear people saying things and these slogans and all this stuff they're talking. Just keep hanging around in there and listen to what's being said. I didn't know a lot of that stuff. I remember I was probably 9 or 10 months sober looking at the promises for the first time. And I sat in front of them every day with it right on the wall in front of me. And I remember going, that actually works.
Yeah, we read it every day at our meeting when I was in treatment. And I remember just bawling, thinking, well, that's a crock of shit, and that will never happen in my life. I've never seen that happen.
Yeah, and we always think we're special. It's like, y'all don't know me.
Yeah.
These millions of people are not me. I'm, these millions of people that saved their life and they've gotten
unique.
sober. Yeah, I'm special.
Terminally.
This crap doesn't apply to me, but boy, does it.
Yeah.
We have a guy that I saw him last night or the night before at a meeting, Steve, older gentleman, and he always introduces himself and he says, I'm an ordinary alcoholic, and I love that. And I get sponsees and they go, well, here's my deal, and they lay into it, and I go, you're an alcoholic, man. You're a drug addict. That's all you are. It's no better, no worse than none of the rest of us. And but we have to get that special. I was real special.
Yeah.
Still am special, Mike says.
So, Mike, when was the first time you felt hope?
I got to thinking about that. Whenever I asked you when the first time I felt hope, I'm not going to say I felt, well, yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. I'll say it was a feeling of hope. I probably had 30 days of I'm guessing there, it could have been 60, it could have been more or less than 30. But I had a certain amount of time and it was probably the longest I've been sober in my adult life. And me and my daughter were out at Clyde Fant, and my step one story generally comes from when we were at Arthur Teague, but this particular day we were at Clyde Fant, and out at Clyde Fant there's a little wooded area, and in that wooded area it was I got sober in June, so July, August, September, October-ish. So probably it was hot, so it had to be August. Anyway, we were out there and the wind was blowing and it was a cool spot, and I just stopped and rested. And for the first time in my adult life, nothing was wrong. I mean, I literally had to think of come up. Normally, these things are just hovering over me at all times, right? You know, they're just problems with the kids, problem with finances, problem with work, problem with how am I going to make up for all the, you know, all of these things. And for one time, in just this split second of life, nothing was wrong.
Everything was okay.
It was just, you know, going back to those promises we will comprehend the word serenity and no peace. Well, for the first time, and you're talking about, you know, one and a half, somewhere in there sober months, for the first time in probably since I take this, I go, you know, I have this memory in my head, right? And my grandmother lived in South Shreveport most of my growing up years, and she had this grass. And Matt's a grass guy, and I don't mean the smoking kind. He cuts it too, not two, but I mean he cuts it
Both, yes. That's true. Statement.
But I think it's called Bermuda, and it's really thick grass.
Can be, yeah.
Well, maybe I'm thinking. Anyway, it doesn't matter what kind of grass she had, but she had it. And I'm a kid, and I'm laying in the backyard, and you can smell the honeysuckle as the wind blows, blowing through the air. And I'm laying in the grass, and I'm looking up at the sky, and there's a few clouds and some blue sky. And I'm not thinking about bills. I'm not thinking about my mom and dad being on me about anything. I'm not thinking about my grandma being mad at me. My sisters haven't even been born yet. That's how long ago this is. You know, they're 43 years old. But I had that feeling of peace. And you know, I must have had this chaotic mind most of my life for me to remember this particular thing happening. But I hadn't felt that way from then, this memory that I have, until I'm 1.5, 2 months in recovery. And I'm just, it doesn't matter. Keep doing what you're doing, and it's going to be okay. Okay. I think for me, and this is just my personal experience, is you learn when you're desperate to turn your will and your life over to God. You learn how quick. I mean, I did. How about that? Let's just go for me. And because I just did not like having the reins of it. I didn't like having control. I didn't like none of it. I needed something to take it all away, something to put it off on. But then over the years, as I get sober, it kind of starts to come back. I see myself in situations that I'm not happy in. I see things about life I don't like. And when I look back, it was all of my making in recovery. And I realize that's me doing my own will, not God's will. And that's what's created this chaos or whatever it happens to be at the time. But that particular memory of that day out there with my daughter, and I don't even know if I told her, you know, she was 11 years old. But I just remember nothing was wrong. Now, we left, got in the car, and I'm sure as soon as we got in the car, life picked itself right back up.
Yeah.
Chaos came back. But I remember that, and I remember thinking, man, if I could get that. I comprehended the word serenity. I did for the first time in a long time. I had a little bit of serenity, you know. But little things like that, I would take back to the club with me, and I would share. As a newcomer, I have nothing else to share. I mean, I can't, you know, I've been sober 30 days. This is what I did. But I would share that kind of stuff as part of my recovery. And it really gave me hope, you know, I wanted that feeling again. I wanted that serene, there is absolutely nothing going on right now that bothers me. I'm just cool as a cucumber. You know, as my mom used to say, cool as a cucumber. And that's my earliest memory of hope. You know, if you think about it, you picking up a 90-day chip and you hadn't drank in 3 months, that gives you hope. But I'm hoping it gives someone else hope, because it is possible for someone who, I was chemically dependent. Okay, and I don't know if there's a difference between addicted and I'm not going to get off into the medical terms, but when they classified me as alcohol dependent, it really pissed me off.
Why?
Because I didn't think I depended on anything. You know, this was still a choice when I was in recovery. Mm-hmm. I'm just doing it a lot. But according to the psychiatrist that worked on me, that I was dependent on alcohol. This isn't, your body has to have it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's physical.
And it was. I mean, when I didn't have it, I shook.
Yeah.
You know, my eyes would water, snot. It's like flu-like symptoms almost. And you get your muscles start to get cramped up, and you know. And when you did drink, you didn't have all that, but you had the dehydration, the major dehydration. And when you're in that position where you don't want to, but you have to, you can't live without it, you can't live with it kind of situation. And by the way, that goes for anything. That goes for relationships. That goes for food. That goes for, alcohol, whatever. That is a place of almost no hope.
Yeah.
Sure. It's very scary too. That's a scary moment to go. And I think we've all been there with that. You have that moment of like, I can't live with it, can't live without it. I mean, that's a bad way to be. Yeah. Very scary spot to be in.
Yeah, I didn't care for it too much.
It wasn't my favorite, but and slowly found our way out of it though.
But you're average people, man. You get out there on the street. I tell you what, you sit around in a break room somewhere, just anywhere that has a lounge or break room or whatever people call it, and sit around and tell them, that you couldn't live with alcohol and you couldn't live without it, and they're gonna think you're crazy.
Yep.
Man, whatever. Come on, you could have stopped. My mother, love my mother to death. Okay, I'm a mama's boy, but I don't think even she to this day understands that you can't. There comes a point, a line that you cross, and I don't know where the line is, so I can't tell somebody where not to cross it. But there comes a point where once you cross that line, you can't cross back over it by yourself.
Yeah.
Agreed. And so we get into AA. I get into AA, and I do not want to listen to these people. And they're my only shot at hope. They're my only hope. Luke, you're my only hope. You ever seen that show? Yeah. It's anyway. It's Star Wars. But but so I had to be a little bit convinced that some of this stuff worked.
I think with hope too, went to a treatment center. It's funny how your attitude will change on things. I was at a treatment center last night, and then there was a lady in there, one of the clients. This was her 11th or 12th rehab stay. A lot of prison time, multiple DUIs. Get out, get a DUI, go to prison, 2-3 years at a time for doing stuff. Get out, and I mean, she was just like she's beat to death, and you could tell it beat her up pretty good. And she started sharing, and she said, the subject was being powerless over something. That's what we talked about. And she said, there's just no hope. I'm 50 years old. I've been doing this for like 25 years, just going to prison, getting out, go to a treatment center, get right back out, do this. I mean, just wash, rinse, repeat. And she said, there's no hope. And I said, no, there is hope, because you're in a treatment center. You still have a shot. You're still breathing. And just when talking with her and talk with her a little bit afterwards, and I said, you're just looking at this all wrong. And the greatest part is, if she can get a handle on it, there's so many people that need to hear what she has to say in that story. But yeah, you can just see the look in people's eyes in places like that. And it's like, this is hopeless. It's not going to work.
Yeah. I think it's difficult for people that have been out there for a long time. And I'm not saying it's not difficult for people that, had a shorter drinking career, but when all you've known is no hope for 30, 20, it's hard to really hard to believe that there is something else.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
I was 100% convinced there was nothing else. And this is just the way things were. And I pretty much had accepted that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. 1,200%. And just.
I thought if this does work and I have to stop alcohol and drugs, that this is just going to be the biggest drag ever. Like the rest of my life is just a drag.
Yeah,
and
lame.
I'm going to be miserable,
So lame.
you know, and it's definitely not that. I mean, it's interesting, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the whole, you know, we've talked about this in an episode, and someone even brought it up in an open meeting, something on one of these episodes, that like, you know, that Alcoholics Anonymous is just where the really wild folks, the cool kids go when they're tired of destroying their bodies.
Yeah.
You know, you want to hang out with some good folks, go to AA, man.
Yeah.
That's where the crazy ones are. And I mean the ones that would, you know, jump off of a.
Well, and you can get crazier because you're actually sober, so there's nothing wearing you down that eventually will stop you from being crazy.
And there's no things that control your inhibition, so you're not going to get destroyed.
Yeah.
You know, ramping over 30 sharks because you saw it drunk while you're watching Happy Days.
Jennifer J and I yesterday were on our way to a funeral. We stop at Ben's house, okay? And he had to come outside and hand me something. The man walks out of his house in a pair of American flag, the shortest drawers I've ever seen in my life. He has no other clothes on. And I know Jennifer was going, okay. And I was like, that's my boy. You know, he just, he's his own character. He don't care. So waving to the neighbors as they drive by. So, man, it's a lot of fun today. You know, it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't have thought this 5 years ago, that this is where I would be. There's no way you could have told me any of this stuff, and I'd have just said, no, there's no way. None of that's happening. But
Agreed.
I have to agree with you on that too, man.
I didn't know what was out there, but I thought this ain't going to be good, you know, and I just dreaded in treatment. They were telling me all kind of stuff and all this hope and all this stuff. And I'm like, you know, none of that's going to happen. I don't see that happening. And, but it did. And it took a long time to sort of, come to that place, you know, and realize, but very early on, I did realize, you know, I managed to go a day without drinking and using, then another day and another day. And sometimes it was hours that I managed to go without drinking and using. And I was tickled with that. I was pretty proud of that. But somewhere in there, I thought, well, we're going to give this a shot and, you know, no matter what. And I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
So glad I did.
And to be honest with you, I'm not trying to be corny here, but you know, man, it's folks like you that give people hope. You know, whenever, you know, and even Jill, when Jill talks about her panic attack things that she had going on for so long, and now she's been sober for 13 years and hasn't had one since, right?
Yeah, haven't had one at all.
Right. And I mean, I could talk about days and days worth of stuff. Now, does that mean you're going to believe me? Probably not.
Yeah.
You're probably going to have to give the thing a shot in order to see.
Sure.
But once you start to see the program work, I don't know if you can convince someone that it don't.
We did Powerless last night, and I took something off of my 5, 5, and 15, and I do that when we're in that meeting. And I shared that. And the lady that's been in there in treatment 11 times, the whole deal, her head just pops up. Because she realizes, oh, yeah, okay, he's in the same boat I'm in. And when you can do that, I think that does give people hope. And they go, well, if he was like that, that's the way I was. So, you know, you talk about war stories, but I shared one and wasn't real complimentary of me, I can tell you. And it's not something that I like sharing, but in that moment it was what needed to be said. And from then on, it's undivided attention, and people go, oh, okay, then this guy's just like us. And, you know, hopefully, I hope she'll kind of, you know.
So tell us a little bit more. What's 5, 5, and 15?
So my step one that I did with my sponsor and the one I do with my guys is the same thing. Is we admitted, step one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. So we list 5 episodes or incidences, if I can say that right, with being powerless over that substance. 5
5 ways you were unmanageable.
Unmanageable, yes. And then
Yeah.
15 consequences. I had my consequences. And
Where'd you get that from?
I'm just curious.
Maybe I don't know. Bobby probably got it out, something related to the big book.
It's
we do
common
is
in treatment.
Yeah.
It was something that I had to do while I was in treatment, and
Yeah.
we may or may not have.
We didn't do it in treatment, but when I got out, I think that's what he did.
Yeah, it's very common with therapy and treatments.
It's called 5, 5, and 15.
5, 5, 15.
I have one in my truck, as a matter of fact.
It's a worksheet type
Yeah,
thing?
worksheet.
Okay. Okay.
And what I like writing them is I can go in there and I can look at it, and then I look back at that and I go, hoo, boy, oh boy.
Yeah, and once you read that, you're like, wow, okay, that's insane.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the consequences, because 15 didn't even begin to touch the amount of consequences I'd been through. And my counselor was like,
And these are all of the consequences resulting in your
And you drinking
Yeah.
and using.
from results from your drink.
So, I'll just tell you what I told her last night, and she kind of had the attitude of, we were talking about powerless and being powerless over something, and my wife at the time, we've had several kids, and my son was being born, my youngest son. We go to the hospital. We're in the labor in the room, right? I'm dope sick, have nothing in my body, climbing the walls, bad shape. We're birthing a child, okay? I call a guy.
Was you in the room when the child?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was. Let me just tell you. So she's in the process of starting the giving birth, and they're getting everything ready that morning, and it's moving along. And I'm up here, can't think about anything else. Can't focus on any of that going on. I've got to have something to inside me to be able to function. So I don't know if we had gotten a ride up there the night before. I don't know what the deal was. We didn't have a vehicle there, and we're in the middle of Jackson, Mississippi in a hospital. I start calling people, hey, man, bring me something up here. Bring me something up here. Get a hold of a guy, and he says, I don't have any pills or anything. I got cocaine. I said, bring that shit up here. That wasn't even my deal, okay?
Do you have
So
money
that's
for
fine.
this? I mean, cocaine
Yeah.
is cheap, at least not on TV.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, as Rick James said.
Did you have the money?
Yeah, I had the money. I guess he wouldn't have came up there. I'm sure I did.
So
But,
Rick James sold it to you.
no, he looked a lot like Rick James. I don't know if it was actually Rick James, but so this is the sick individual that I am. A woman who I've been married to is having a child, and I'm buying cocaine in a parking lot of a hospital. Go up to the hospital room, the little side bathroom with the little door that they have in the rooms where like the nurses wash their hands and stuff. I'm in there doing cocaine while she's outside giving labor. Okay. And then I pop out. I'm ready to go. Party time. Let's have a baby. Right? What an idiot. That guy was born. That kid was born. I went to treatment in 2018. He's 12 now. So I lived like that for 7 more years.
Yeah.
Can't function.
Yeah. It kind of took getting sober to even realize that there was something off about the picture of buying cocaine.
He just had, yeah. I mean, but where was I at that being awake, blinking, just breathing, I can't function in life without something in me, and not even something I normally did, but it didn't matter at that point. And that's powerless over something. I mean, I had no control. I didn't care if we were having triplets. It didn't matter how many kids we were having. It ain't happening until I take care of this problem.
Well, I mean, not to justify it, but at the time, your body needed it, right? Mm-hmm. So,
Which,
Needed something.
yeah.
But where am I at in life that doesn't stick out? Most normal people wouldn't be in that position to begin with, but where am I at that I don't look back on that a week later and go, man, I'm in bad shape. I couldn't even go. No, 7 more years.
Well, and that's denial. That's denial. And once you get out, and that whole exercise is to get you out of denial
Mm-hmm.
because normal people don't do that.
I mean, I bust out of the bathroom like Chris Farley, hey, I'm ready now. They're like,
exactly.
he was dead when he went in there, and now he's wide awake,
Exactly.
I mean,
but, when I think about hope and I think about when I first started to feel that, I feel that it happened in increments. Because it took me growing and learning more about myself, having new experiences or doing things I'd never done before and actually being successful at it, that I was like, oh, wow. It was just like the little baby steps of early recovery. It took me 4 months to find a job. No one wanted to hire me. My work history was crap. So finding, the first job was like, oh, wow. And so that gave me some hope.
Yeah.
And it was just like the little itty bitty things that started to happen that started to give me more hope.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
And it still does happen that way, because I think it is definitely a state of mind. And if we don't practice and stay in it, we will lose it.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important for me to stay into meetings, because I have to remember all of this stuff. And by me going to a meeting and seeing a newcomer, whether they're sick, or whatever they're talking about, or just being scared to death, that brings me back to that day when I had zero hope. And I thought none of this would work out and that I'd even still be here. And it is weird to think and to look back that I was in a place so bad I didn't see a way out, and to where I had zero hope. And that it's just it's amazing.
yeah.
And I wish, just like your stories you're telling, I wish that in itself would be enough for that newcomer to have hope.
Right. But I can only imagine them being in the same headspace we were in.
And they are.
Exactly.
And is there, there's nothing I'm going to be able to say, other than keep coming back.
Right.
Man.
Right.
That used to piss me off too. Like, where am I going?
You know what pisses me off when someone says that now?
Oh, I'm just so used to it.
There's a couple of smart asses in our group that like to long-time sobriety people share. They go, keep coming back. Or
I know,
thanks
I
for
was
sharing.
like,
You
That's
got to
the
think
other
about after you're going to hear a few things after someone shares. If you ever pay attention, you're going to hear, glad you're here.
That's one.
Keep coming back.
stay until the miracle happens.
Call 911.
Thank you. I guess you can grade how well you share, which you should never worry about that, by the way.
No.
This is not a competition of how long you can share, how good you can share. This is just about sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And hope, emphasis on hope. But there is absolutely nothing in that big book that says you have to be a scholar whenever you talk.
And
no,
you
I
know
agree.
what? This goes back to get a home group, man.
Well-
go to your same folks. I mean, because you get around those same people, you see struggles, you see celebrations, you see milestones, and you meet people like you that are coming in at the time you're coming in, and you can sort of bond together with those people. And as you go, you'll kind of grow together, And yeah, we do have a little fun, but we've all been around each other a while, and it's okay,
Yeah. And once you're around folks for a while, you kind of wonder, how in the world was I not around these people the whole time?
I was picking on Larry the other night because he talked about Johnny Unitas, and I was like, "Damn, Larry, how old are you?"
He's pretty old.
Yeah, if that's your favorite quarterback, So
That was his favorite quarterback.
That's
Guy was
his
like
idol,
in the
man.
50s,
Yeah, I
wasn't it?
know. That's what I said.
Maybe the 60s.
Yeah, but yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just get in there and keep hanging out, and get around people that are trying to do this and
Well, they're definitely. I will say this, but hope can spread.
Yeah, agreed.
Hope can spread. You can spread hope. I guess the way I would do it if I was trying to spread hope tell the truth. You know, this is what it was like. This is what happened. This is what I went through. This is my issues. These are the things I dealt with. This was my headspace. I like that word, Jill. This was my headspace whenever I came into the rooms. And look at me now.
Right.
And
Well,
we can laugh about ourselves at this point.
Sure.
That in itself is hope
Sure.
for me.
And that's what got me is all those people that had been in there and they'd worked their program and they had some recovery. They talked about all this stuff that you would think so horrible, and they're laughing and they're making fun of themselves, very self-depreciating, and I just love that, and it was so honest and fresh, and you know, I thought, man, I hope one day I can look at it like that, and I do now, you know.
Yeah.
So
well, you know, one of the cool things as far as like what I get to do for a living is educate people on addiction. You know, work through them. I mean, work through whatever issues are going on regarding their addiction and all of that. But I get to also share my experience, strength, and hope with these guys. And I mean, even with a newcomer or a sponsee, just to see that hope in their eyes, or them look at you or say something like, and I hear this a lot, especially at work, like, wow, they really, those guys really believed me, and I can guarantee you the majority of them have probably had a worse time than I had.
Yeah.
And they listen
sure.
with intent, because they just know, like, she's been through it too. And I think that's why it's so important to carry the message, to sponsor, because what a person that has recovered can do is bring hope to that new person. And every day I get to talk to someone that has zero hope. I get to look at men in the eyes that are empty, it just black, because they've been in prison for the last 20-something years.
Yeah.
And to them, there is no hope. I get to work with a certain population that the obstacles that they will have to go through once they're released are almost set for them to fail.
Right.
And they have no hope. And I like to be able, I like that I am able to bring that, because I know that sense of hopelessness. And it's the scariest place I think I've ever been. I never want to go back to that again. I mean, I can't afford to. I just can't. That's
Yeah, it costs too much emotionally.
It does.
I mean, can you imagine though, with a program, going back to that?
No, I can't.
it's-
And
That's, I guess that would be a
Jill,
testament to the program.
How long you been sober, Jill?
about 13 and a half
13
years.
So 14 and a half years ago, did you think you would be sharing with guys?
Absolutely not. Oh my gosh,
That's what I'm
no.
getting at. Look at how far that's turned, you know.
It's wild.
12 years ago, and not to take away from Jill,
No, that's fine.
but 12 years ago, I was living in a one-bedroom apartment. 13 years ago now. I was living in a one-bedroom apartment in South Bossier, estranged from my children, driving, I don't know, just whatever I could drive to get back and forth to work, trying to make ends meet so that I could buy plenty of liquor, missing a lot of work, which is very uncharacteristic of me. And I was stuck in a hole I couldn't get out of. Okay. So fast forward to today, 2023, 12 years after I got sober. And I've lived in West Monroe. I've lived in New Orleans. I now live right outside of Dallas. I've worked in 3 different capacities as far as promotions go. I have had vacations that allowed me to visit all 50 states, and 40 of them being in recovery. I've had 2 grandchildren born that don't know what it's like to have an alcoholic grandfather. I mean, I've watched my son recover from addiction or get into recovery. I watched both of my children graduate. I watched both of my children get married. I was the best man at one and gave away at the other. I mean,
all of that, if you think about it, was way out of the, think of the promises,
Yeah.
because none of that's promised. There ain't no promise that says but all of that has happened to me just in 12 years. And someone sitting there might be in their 30s going, well, 12 years from now, well, I'm 50, right? I'm 50 years old and I have everything in this world to live for, right? I'm very grateful for but I mean, I didn't have any hope that it sure as hell wasn't me that all this happened.
Right.
All right. It was my higher power putting me in the rooms so I could get closer to my higher power, which I seem to always be closer when I'm in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and I'm sharing and I'm talking to people who maybe or maybe not struggling, just want to talk, just need somebody there. But I mean, the life I live now was not even imagined. I never imagined I would even be out of Bossier City.
I couldn't have ever imagined. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
And God just has a funny way of steering us where we need to go, And sometimes I think He does it with me in spite of me, in spite of my best intentions to screw it up, And I'm glad today that I can. And I told that young lady last night. I said, you know what? I don't tell this one very much. I said, but I'm going to tell you where I was at. Because it was the no hope. I mean, that's what it would look on her face. And we go in those treatment centers, and y'all do too. And there may be 50 people in there. Well, about 47 of them, for whatever reason, have no interest in being there or kind of halfway, whatever the situation might be. But there's always one or two that are truly, those are the people we're there to talk to.
Right.
And that young lady last night, I mean, I'm looking in the mirror basically, and
know the look.
Yeah, sure.
I mean,
sure.
we can spot it.
Sure. And she was embarrassed, and I'm like, why are you embarrassed? I said, number one, there's no cowards. A coward doesn't come in here for their 12th time. Okay, they just give up. That's what they do. You already are showing things that are going to do well. If you can get a handle on this and. I don't know. It just, I know that look,
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do too. But there is hope.
Yeah.
So, got anything else on hope? Anybody? If not, that about wraps up this.
I hope I catch some fish this week.
I hope you do too, Matt. I hope you catch them all.
I never will.
Yeah.
I never have.
It reminds me of a friend of mine told me he got pulled over one time by a state trooper on the interstate, and whenever the state trooper got up to the window, he said, "When I was going along with traffic, everybody out there was going the same speed as me." And the state trooper asked him, he said, "Well, have you ever been fishing?" And the guy said, "Yeah, I go fishing all the time." And the state trooper said, "Have you ever caught them all?" So it made me laugh. So that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Grouch and the Brainstorm on Hope. And the next episode is going to be a surprise episode, number 25. Big bonus episode with a special guest and a special topic. So let's do some shout-outs. And as always, we got to thank our loyal listeners. We got Faye, we got Judy, we got Larry, we got Michelle, we got Kim and Rhonda, Chris C., Sheila, Amy C. We got Bree down there in Covington, Mandeville area, somewhere down in there. And I just want to remind everyone that we look forward to hearing your emails and getting your text messages. And, I got to remind you about the email address. It's G&B Bossier, BOSSIER, @gmail.com. Or you can send us a voicemail. We'll play it on the air. If you say not to play it on the air, we won't play it on the air, but we'd love to hear from you. It's area code 985-377-4816. Talk all you want. Talk as little. If I need to go in and edit some out, I can go in and edit some out too. So, really, really love to hear from our listeners. Would love to hear from you. And just want to thank everyone for listening. Episode 25 coming up next week. It's going to be a late drop. It probably will not drop till Tuesday. So, but be listening for it. And
send us some feedback. We love to hear from you. So, from the Grouch and the Brainstorm, this is Mike signing out.